Welcome into another edition of the Hops and Spirits podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Green. Joining us here in just a little bit will be Chris Seals and John Schrepel of Still Austin Whiskey Company down in Texas. But before we get to them, don't forget to check out our Drinking Buddies Club where you can win awesome monthly giveaways. All you got to do is sign up and it's free. Just go to any of our social media pages at Hops Spirits, all one word, and click the link in our bio. Follow the directions. It takes but a minute. You can win some amazing prizes. And don't forget, also on our social media pages and our YouTube, you can check out our Give It a Try 60-second highlight, which just a few weeks ago I did the Still Austin the Musician highlight. So you need to check that out as we talk about it here in just a second. And guys, Chris Seals, the CEO of Still Austin, and John Schrepel, the head distiller of Still Austin. Welcome in.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Now, as I teased you guys a little bit beforehand, I gave you a little heads up about what my first question was going to be. And this week, I remembered to say it correctly. Last couple of weeks, I got a little off cue and had to throw it in a little later. But one tough question, what did you guys want to be when you were growing up?
John, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I mean, so I honestly actually struggled with this, trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I was in high school, and I didn't know if I wanted to go to college or, pursue something in a business world or whatever it may be. And I really kind of stumbled upon, and I was very fortunate to find a job at the Wark Valley Winery and Distillery, and I worked there just working from the ground up, mowing lawns and doing certain things, still trying to figure out what to do. And I'm like, man, I gotta do something with my life. I just don't know what to do with it yet. And I was stuck. Like I didn't have the I'm going to college to do this, so that's was my dilemma. But as I had that dilemma, working at the winery and slowly working my way up, and they owned 3 different businesses: the winery, the distillery, and a cider company. And I slowly worked my way into doing bottling and packaging at Dockstraff Hard Cider, and that was, I found, really neat. Getting apple juice in and fermenting it and filtering and cleaning kegs and running the bottling line. I'm like, this is kind of cool. And then years just go by real fast, and I ran that facility for a little while, and at that time Black Dirt Distillery was being built into, which is now the largest distillery in New York State. And then it was as nonchalant as I was at Dockstraff, and Jason, my old boss, he was like, "You ready to move over to your new job?" And I was like, yeah, sure. I made mash on a very small scale, just filling up 250-gallon totes, to overnight doing a 2,500-gallon cook and running a 60-foot column still over the course of 4 or 5 years. And I really fell in love with the industry of making alcohol in general after that. But really distilling was my passion, and I just fell in love with it. And I would say I really started my career when I made the move to Austin, Texas, moving from my home state, and working at Still Austin, and fortunate enough to become the head distiller here, and experience everything that we're doing here. And so I kind of just fell into, this is what I want. What do I want to be when I grow up? This is it, and it's been a 10-year journey now, but haven't looked back ever since. This is what I will be doing.
That's pretty. I think, John, you did a pretty good job on that one. I'm not too different, honestly. I was a really creative kid. I was I guess going all the way back to middle school, I was the theater kid, arts kid. I think maybe at some point I thought I would do something in performing arts. I don't know that I knew quite what. I think that I also thought I would probably do something in business. I come from a family that does a lot of stuff in business, and so it seemed like that was pretty natural for me. It sounds boring, and in saying it, but I always thought I'd do something in that was like I had a little element of entrepreneurship or creativity to it. And for a long time, I was I ended up going to UT, got a degree, went further on to University of Houston, got a master's over there, and it ended up working for a long time as an economist, which is kind of a jack of all trades. That's actually good training for being in the whiskey industry, where you got to be even more of a jack of all trades. You got to be able to do a lot of stuff. So I think that the creative aspect ended up being, kind of useful more than I would have expected. So yeah.
Okay, I've always said, you guys are artists. It's just you're using a different medium than most. For me, I thought I would potentially own a business. That went out real quick when I took macroeconomics and about fell asleep in my college class. And then I kind of went to what I think always wanted to grow up being was on ESPN or Sports Center, and quickly found out that there's not a lot of money in sports talk. So I then went to a place where there's just a smidge more money, and that was sports reporting for a newspaper. And now I've gone over to the quote unquote dark side and PR and have a nice little side hobby with this podcast. But yeah, you just never know how the journey is going to go and what might change your route along the way.
Don't. Just gotta go with the punches, go with the flow.
Exactly. Now, Chris, for you, I was reading you and your father and a couple co-founders launched Still Austin Whiskey Company, and how did that come about? Because what little bit I read, I enjoyed the story.
Oh yeah. So the way I got into this, I was working as an economist at that time. This is going back about 8 years ago, and I worked into kind of doing a lot of feasibility studies, primarily for governments or big projects, things that a lot of things can go wrong. So that was kind of a focus of mine, was kind of what are all the risks involved in doing this thing that people are thinking about doing. And my dad came to me and said he wanted to. He kind of retired about that time. It was kind of going through a retirement crisis, figuring out what's he gonna do now. And he said he wanted to start a craft whiskey distillery, and he asked me if I would help him. And so that's actually kind of how I got into it. I honestly can say that, like, you look at a lot of numbers when you're doing a feasibility study. You usually kind of get a pretty good idea pretty quick if something's got a lot of risk to it or not. And this was the worst idea that I'd ever seen come across my desk. It was like solidly terrible. There's like, we're gonna start working with farmers and grow grains and build a whiskey distillery and start aging it here in Texas. Wait a long time. Hopefully it tastes good, and then we're gonna try to build a brand and try to sell some in a bottle. That just sounds like a terrible idea. And so I originally signed up for this as a kind of like a way of helping my dad cope with his retirement crisis and basically spend time together. He wants to spend time with me. Let's do it, and we'll go visit a bunch of distilleries and have a good time and drink a lot of whiskey and travel and all that sort of stuff. And then pretty soon we'll get to that point where it's time to come to our senses and decide this is a terrible idea. But we don't have to get there too fast. And so that's kind of what I signed up for. And we did that. And we started to really fall in love with kind of the idea of making something that was genuine to Austin. We're a unique city. We're not like anything else in the United States, I think, and have our own point of view. And because it was a legacy kind of project to begin with, it just seemed like we could just do it the way we wanted to. And fortunately, along the way, state laws in Texas changed, and that made it more feasible to open a craft whiskey distillery. And so we did. We've had a lot of fun with it. So that's kind of how I got it.
I love that. You never know how things will go, and yeah, when you think of long term investments, whiskey's long term for for sure,
No kidding.
in terms of letting it all age and so forth. I also want to know, like, I'm sure your past experiences, life experiences, whether it was being somewhat on a farm, things like that. How did those influence you and what ended up becoming Still Austin?
Yeah, for me, so my great grandfather homesteaded a farm, and we still operate it today. And so I had a little bit of farming background, and not really, not more on the operation side than actually. I mean, I spent a lot of time, a lot of summers, a lot of winters as a kid out in the field helping with the farm. So didn't mind getting my hands dirty too. But it gave me like a lot of appreciation for the things that we grow here, what makes our culture different, the things that we eat and drink have a strong connection to it. And I think that like that's one of the cool things. You're talking about being creative. There's like when you're making a new product that has not been made before in your region, and you're working with your local grains. I mean, it's a journey of learning. It's not like a craft that you can master. It's more of a craft that you're making as you go, kind of building the bridge as you walk on it, and you're trying to kind of figure it out. And we're really lucky that we have like people like John that have experience in other regions of the United States, or other people on our team from regions of the world, that we got to rely on some of their experiences. But it's definitely, I mean, it's a creative journey for sure. Just trying to work with our local grain and bring out those flavors.
And John, for you, you're a New York guy. How did you end up in Texas?
Well, I'm a New York guy, but I'm not really a fan of the cold weather. So I always had an exit strategy of wanting to move down south. And I just, one day, now it was maybe now it was going to be Texas, but like south was what I wanted, for sure. And I started looking for jobs, and saw Still Austin, and there was a lot of distilling jobs, but there weren't too many column distilling jobs. And column is really where I have my experience and what I really enjoy doing. So I saw Still Austin's job post, and applied and moved on down here. Probably did about a month's time. It was actually a pretty crazy journey. I applied and kind of just like, oh, let's just test the waters. I'll never forget it. And I got an email in like 3 hours, and I was like, okay. And I was on the phone with Chris Seals that night, and then I remember him saying, "When can you fly down?" And I'm like, I was like, send me flight times. Sent me flight times. I was down there in a week, and I was here in a month. And I was like, all right, well, cool. This is what's happening. Yeah. Never.
That sounds like you guys don't wait around at all.
Yeah, get things done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you kind of mentioned, the column still and so forth, and that is a perfect segue into the Nancy. Yeah. Can you guys explain what that is, and why did you go that route? Because that's a 42-foot tall Scottish made still. Why that?
I can tell you a little bit about like how we came to it, and then John can tell you a little bit more about like, I don't think we really appreciated how special she is until John kind of started to work with her. But we'd been visiting a lot of different places, and kind of had seen pot still distillation at a lot of them, and that was kind of more along the line of our original vision. Mainly, we're two, at that time 6 highly unqualified people trying to start a distillery, and so we were just kind of going off of what we'd seen from a lot of craft distilleries, and we brought in a guy, Mike Delavante. He's one of the most experienced master distillers in North America. and we asked him to help us to design the distillery, and we told him our dream of trying to make something that has a flavor from our place and kind of gives us a sense of who we are as people. And he said, well, you're just not going to get it from a pot still. If you really want to be able to bring out the flavor of your grains and your place, you really should be doing it on a column still. And we were like, oh God, that's just so different. That's just like, we were so worried about, like, this doesn't feel very like crafty. And like, he was like, this will give you so much more control. And one of the things that I think, we kind of went through a little bit of a mini identity crisis right around then. Like, are we trying to be like all these other craft distilleries with their beautiful copper pot stills, or are we truly independent? Are we different from other folks? And it was just like one of those moments where we just decided, and I'll never forget one of my co-founders, Joanna, she said, if we're gonna do this, we just gotta own it. And that's kind of the spirit of Austin, Texas in and of itself. Like, individuality, what makes you different is awesome, high diversity, all that sort of stuff is part of our DNA. And I was like, you know what, we're just gonna own it. We're gonna be different. And it has made all the difference. It's a beautiful still. It's made in Scotland by a company called Forsyths. It's one of a kind. Like, there is no other column still, certainly not one made by Forsyths in North America, but no other one that's quite like this. It's really crafty and gives us a lot of bells and whistles. I mean, John could probably tell you more about like all the pieces that she's named Nancy after Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but she's named after the lead character, and so you can kind of get a sense of what she might look like, how tall she is. But John can probably tell you more about like how she works and kind of what we're able to do with Nancy.
Yeah. So like what Chris was saying, it's completely one of one, completely custom design for the things that we wanted to achieve. Couple differences with, say, I'm just going to speak off my experiences. The Vendome that I worked off of, it had say 25, 30 stripping trays, but then it had just 3 rectifying trays, and then a doubler to finish the product, kind of like a pot still. So stripping trays, you're stripping the alcohol out of the mash. That's kind of just like the raw form of the distillate. Then it goes into the rectifying section. That's another redistillation piece of it, redistilling it, redefining it, enhancing those flavors and increasing the proof. And then dropping it down to a doubler, you're doing that process again. We don't have a doubler. We have more rectifying trays. So we have 12 rectifying trays and, say, those same 25 stripping trays. And then, beer preheater, condenser, but then we have a vent condenser that strips all of the methanol and the heads, all of that stuff, that nasty byproduct that you don't want, into a separate tank continuously. So it's not a cut in the beginning and the end, or, vapors blowing off inside the doubler. It's a constant cut every minute of the day that the column's being ran. And I really think that puts a massive difference in the product that we make and the proofs that we're able to distill off of. Off the Vendome, you would want to distill at that legal limit, 155, 160, because it's a heavy product. And I really feel that pot stills, there's no wrong way about doing this either, by the way. It's just, ours is different. And just my opinion based upon pot stills and different columns. From my experiences, distilling at 155, 160 proof, it was extremely heavy, and you have to put it away in a barrel for a certain amount of time just to get rid of those impurities. It's not a finished product whatsoever. And the column here, Nancy, it makes such a delicious, clean product right off the bat of the still. It's super flavorful. It's very sweet. It's got a lot of corn and rye characteristics. I mean, it's kind of wild. And you're distilling at, you could distill all the way down to 120 proof, 130 proof, and it is very, very clean. And I think that, you know, it really helps with putting barrels away and kind of letting the barrel do the work at this point, and let the barrel complement the product that we put into it, instead of, you know, at times you have to let it rest and, you know, take away some of those impurities. We're just complementing the barrel with what we're doing. And it gives us a very wide range of things that we can do also. You know, not only can we make bourbon, you can go as far as it's designed to also make rum, which we haven't done yet, but it is designed to make rum. You can, and the thing that we do use is you can distill from really 120 proof all the way up to 190 proof. And you can pull a continuous tails cut off the lower trays to make it a very neutral product. So one of the examples that we do for the Naturalist, our gin, we make our own base, and we're very rye driven distillery. So when we wanted to make the gin, we were like, what can be different? Instead of, you know, sourcing GNS, we're really into the whole Texas grown grains, everything Texas, do everything in house. We're like, let's make our own base. I mean, the column can do it. Like, why not do it? You know, so we landed on a 70% rye, 30% corn, and pulling all the way off at that top 12th tray, because we want it fairly neutral, but I really wanted to capture some of that rye characteristic. Really didn't want it to be super, super juniper forward. I wanted it to be a craft gin. So we were able to pull off the 12th tray. It's still about 185 proof instead of that traditional 190, 192. Get some of that characteristic out of it, and we were able to make a really awesome product. The Naturalist, our gin, the base off the column. So it's a very, very multi-versatile still. It's just a ton of fun to work with.
I was gonna say, it sounds like that, and then another thing that's kind of unique for you all is that if you choose to do the slow reduction, water reduction, I'm guessing that's another way to just make sure you guys are catching the flavors y'all want. I mean, why go that way when not a lot like to, because it's time and labor intensive.
Well, that's another thing I learned when I came down here, meeting Nancy Fraley, and taking a couple of her classes. And you know, when I first met her, she pitched, you know what I do with all of my clients. You know, we do it's called élevage. You're raising the term really is like you're raising your barrels from birth to maturity, you know, and every step of the way is so critical, and inside that is slow water reduction. And she was saying, you know, the risk of spiffonification is a real thing, and if you just in general pull out a 2-year-old bourbon, or whenever you decide that it's done and you're at barrel strength, and say you want a bottle tomorrow and you just proof it down right away, you really have the potential to ruin your product by just not letting the water and the alcohol bind well. And you know, it was very interesting to me at first, but then when you really do taste a product that was slow water reduced, just if you take a bottle out of a barrel and it's 118 proof and you proof it down that day, and then you take a bottle and you proof it down very slowly, that's a dramatic difference. But we take it a step further to just guarantee that we're putting out the best possible product. This is like the ultimate way to do slow water reduction, is doing everything in barrel. So once you decide, like, okay, for example, the musician's 2 years old, we're really happy with how it tastes at cask strength, 118 proof is our cask strength, let's start reducing it down. From 114 up to 125, the legal limit of your barrel entry proofs, you're getting a lot of the oak characteristic from the barrel. So if it's that its whole entire life, you're not really able for it to, you're not giving it the ability to touch the water soluble sugar range, which is 114 and below. So we will initially start a 2-year-old barrel. We'll open it up, proof it down 4 proof points to 114 proof, and then we'll let it sit for a month. And then so on and so forth. We'll go from 114 to 110 to 106. And it's about a 4 to 6 month process. And we let it sit at every single proof point for a month. And we're really extracting those flavors that you want out of your bourbon, the vanilla, the toffee, all of your fruits, and dates and figs, and like all of those sweet characteristics that are really hard to get if you're not hitting those proof points of the wood. So that's like a key thing for us, and we're gonna do that forever in barrel. We're gonna figure it out for sure. It's something that you can't stop at this point. It's too good, and there's absolutely no reason to. If there's a will, there's a way, and we'll figure it out. Whether it's more labor or whatever, it's that's just what we do.
Well, and it comes through in the product. And another thing that I find interesting too is for you, John, you worked obviously in a colder climate in terms of distilling. Texas is not normally cold. It can get cold on occasion. Yeah. But I mean, how was it going down there, and what's it like working with the Texas heat? Because I'm sure that changes characteristics
Sure.
as well.
Yeah. It's very interesting, and it really opened my eyes to why it's so fun being in the craft world, and just really truly realizing that everyone's product is truly unique to their region, to their climate, and that's what makes craft distilling so much fun, first off. But yeah, it's a massive difference where people think like a 2-year-old bourbon's young, and yeah, I can agree with you. In some climates it is, but in other climates it's really not. Barrels typically go dormant under 45 degrees, so they're not pumping in and out of the wood when it's wintertime. They're just complacent, and not really much is going on. Well, if not really much is going on for 6 months out of the year, it makes sense that you need to have a 4-year-old bourbon to be mature. Well, here you really have to be very reactive and very careful monitoring the barrels, because they're aging really 12 months out of the year. So you definitely, in my opinion, can definitely put out a product at a younger age, and it be to the par of a 4-year-old product. Now, on the flip side of that, I've always been asked, well, how long can it go? And it's like, well, that's a great question. I'm trying to figure that out, but I'm being reactive, and not just doing exactly what I do, distilling the same way. At first we distilled a little higher because we wanted to get a bourbon out faster, and now we're working our way down, trying to get it a little heavier, because we know that these are going to be put away for years and years and years to come. So now I distill, instead of say 150, I can go down to 125, 130, make it a heavier product. And now, instead of barreling at 118 proof, I'm barreling at 116 proof. I've noticed that it's going up about 2 to 4 proof points over the course of 2 to 3 years. So if I'm at 118 and I'm opening up a barrel and it's at 122, I want to open up a barrel in 4 years and it be 120, and then I know I still can do my slow water reduction program, and not make it just a totally, just like an oak forward, oak bomb, spice bomb, whatever you want to call it. So definitely trying to be reactive and put them away at a lower proof and distill at a lower proof. And the slow water reduction is just such a good safe haven to have, especially in Texas.
Yeah, I was going to say that's got to be nice to have that in your back pocket. Now, Chris, when we're talking about the operations there, I know one thing that you guys prided yourself on is sustainability and multiple ways, zero waste. Why was that such an important part of this whole process of launching, and then kind of what you even do do now with everything?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm curious too, like with the other distilleries that you've interviewed, has sustainability been a part of their DNA? I'll answer your question, but I'll ask one first. I'm just curious.
Probably not. I think the only one that has, to my knowledge, that I've talked to, and I haven't talked to all of them or asked them all, was a brewery. But they're known as Athletic Brewing, and they do a thing called Two for Trails, and you can kind of figure out what their model is. So as part of their DNA that they talk about, only one, and that was a brewery, to my knowledge, that I remember.
Yeah, for us, okay, this kind of came very naturally. For about a decade, I was the in-house economist for Eco Canada. It was on contract, but I was essentially working for the Environmental Association of Canada. And so I learned and got exposed to a lot about operating a business in a way that minimizes your environmental impact. And also, it has, it's improving the quality of life for the people that are around you, kind of more of an ethically operated business as well. And so for us, we're here in Austin. Austin's one of the greenest cities in America. We have cared about our environment when it was sort of a weird thing to be worried about. And it's kind of put us on the front edge of trying to be a more sustainable and green city. So we had some good environmental regulation here that kind of helps with kind of keeping up standards, but we really want to go far beyond that and really just do a spectacular job and be a model. And now you can kind of see that even with some of the big guys beginning to copy our ideas. But we work with a group of energy engineers first out of UT. They helped us to kind of design the distillery to minimize our energy and our water use. We wanted to keep those at an absolute minimum. And there's a lot of special aspects to the way that the facility is designed. And really through the savings that we save a lot of money. We got a low energy bill, which is really nice. We don't mind saving money. But it also gives us the ability to spend a little bit more on the grain and be able to source. We support 100% family-owned farms here in Texas. Full stop. We don't buy grains from anybody other than farmers here in our state, and that we like to work on projects where they grow grain varieties that are a little bit more interesting, have more flavor qualities to them, are more indigenous to our area. Some of the projects we've got going now, they may take a while, it may take a couple decades before they really come into their own, but they really help to increase the biodiversity of our region. That helps our pollinators, and we have a lot of focus on operating sustainably at the farming level. All of our farmers, face issues with soil quality, water shortage, irrigation, being very, very conservative in managing the land so that it can continue to be productive for the next couple hundred years. And so really from the ground up, really, we look there. We do everything from a zero waste philosophy at the distillery, so we don't have to throw anything in the trash. We give all of our spent grains to. We've got a number of local ranchers that come and pick up spent grains a couple times a day and feed it to their cattle, so that it kind of helps to return. And it starts at the farm, kind of comes back to the farm. But we look at every single stage of our business and our impacts out in the field, everything with an environmental lens, just trying to be good stewards. And of course, everybody loves to support somebody who's just trying to do the right thing. And that's just kind of the way that we started it, and it's just become a little part of our DNA. I
was gonna say, and you kind of take that Texas mentality there of from grain to glass, and even the labels on your glasses. And you want to talk a little bit about that, because I know that you also just rebranded your gin, but you have the Musician out now that has a lovely label and so forth. So you want to talk about how you came up with those ideas and wanted to go that route?
So I mean, like, once again, just kind of like a continuation of the same kind of basic idea, focusing on local grains, doing everything from grain to glass ourselves here locally. We have a very vibrant community here in Austin. We're different than a lot of places, and we've got a very vibrant art scene, obviously an incredible music scene. And so now that we really felt like we had made something that was a genuine, beautiful spirit, genuine work of art, and the flavor and quality, the roundness, the finesse, all of these things that had come out of all of our ingredients and things that we have here, and our own passion as well. We wanted to kind of tap our local community again, and so we, for the bourbon, we asked Mark Burkhart, who's he's been the Texas State artist. He's here local, very, very accomplished painter and artist. But we asked him if he would paint for us a series of portraits of Austinites and of Texans that would give a sense of who we are and what makes us special. And what he did after tasting what became the Musician is he painted one snapshot of kind of the mythology of Austin, which is our musicians. And you can see her on the label. She's beautiful. She's sort of unusual in that she's playing her own hair. I don't know if you noticed the kind of
Yeah, I just noticed that when I looked at the bottle. I went, oh, that's
of
different. Yeah.
of her, and it's kind of she surprised us in a lot of ways that we didn't really quite expect, and being unexpected is definitely it's a wonderful thing when it's beautiful. And she surprised us, I think, maybe more than anything, in that she's possibly the only woman on the whiskey aisle. There's Jack Daniels, there's Jim Beam, there's a million different male-oriented whiskeys, but she's a beautiful lady. And I think that kind of speaks to what Mark first experienced in the spirit itself. And I think that bringing out that piece, it's our musicians are just kind of like the soul of our city. We do a lot. We have live music capital of the world, but it's also like very, very close to our hearts here. And there's a lot of love, like, for music, for live music, but also for our musicians. And I couldn't think of a better symbol to represent what we aspire to be. It's always a humbling undertaking to try to take on sort of the spirit of your city and your place, and try to represent that as best you possibly can. And I think Mark, he just poured his heart and soul into her, and we hope you enjoy her as much as we do. I think she's beautiful, and with the second in the series, with the Naturalist, which is our gin, he painted a second portrait of our nature-loving naturalists of Austin, and part of why we're such a green city. You might, I don't know if you have a bottle. I've got one here, I think.
See, he always comes prepared.
She's surrounded by all of the botanicals that are in the gin, and she doesn't appear to be wearing any clothing, which I think there's something to be said about, just kind of being a little bit more free spirited. And then I think that's part of who we are as well. And I think there's another expression of what we value and treasure here in Austin. I think we're home to the only state park that is also a nude beach, and in our state, and Hippie Hollow, and it's just something that everyone here just loves, being out in nature, being on the water, being out hiking, just taking in all the beauty that surrounds us here. So, and it's very, very green city. It's spectacular.
Well, and I did get to try the bourbon, the Musician. Like I said, it was on our highlight a couple weeks ago, and it's one of those things when you read. I feel like any whiskey drinker can read and go 2 years, or be nervous. I don't want to say because they can be nervous because everyone thinks, it might be too young, but I didn't really get that, and I thought it was a very flavorful 2-year-old, and I've only had maybe one or two others that I can ever say that about so far. And I really enjoyed it. What's been the response, and what's it been like making this? Because I know it's finally, the baby's finally out in the world.
John can probably tell you because he's about to have a baby, but I'm a parent as well, and I have 3 kids, and this is not my only flavorful 2-year-old. The 2-year-olds definitely have like character to them, and the response from the community, and John could probably talk more about like the whiskey nerd community, the kind of serious whiskey community, but it's been spectacular. It's been way better than we thought it would be, and I think it's because it's so genuine. Like we never cut a corner. We never. A lot of distilleries like to buy whiskey from other places and blend it into what they make, and that just didn't really ever. It just didn't seem like it was our path. And I think being independent and honoring yourself and what makes your product and who you are different, it's made all the difference. People like that. Everyone wants to be proud of who they are. And I think that taking such great pains to make the very best, it comes across in the story, but people typically don't just buy a bottle. Like, they tend to buy it pretty regularly once they've tasted it, because it's delicious and familiar to us. But John could probably talk to you too about like how how the Musician compares with others. I don't know, John, what are you could probably add more to that.
Yeah, I mean, like what Chris was saying, I mean, I've never, I've never seen a place, a distillery where there's truly, at least to our knowledge, there's absolutely no shortcut at all. Like, taking every single step, every single precaution, really trying to perfect it. And what's fun about, trying to perfect the craft, you're never actually going to perfect the craft, but it's always going to keep you on your toes. It's always going to keep you really interested, keep you engaged in trying to make the best possible product. Not only just me, but my whole entire team. They're just extremely dedicated individuals that have the same common goal as I and everybody else. But on the distilling team specifically, everyone understands the story, the goal, and really wants to make a extremely good product and really impress the public and have everybody really enjoy themselves. And I really do think it shows. I just really want to keep it up and keep it going. But it's very exciting what we have going on, really is. And the feedback that I've gotten is people are very happy. They're very happy, and they are. You do get the whole 2-year-old thing, and it's actually kind of fun because it really started out with the 1 year, and it's like, no, okay. So where I can draw the line is that 1 year's young. It is, sure, But we were just like kind of giving a tease of like, listen, this is what's putting away, and that 1 year even can pull up pretty good to some older products for
Mhm.
sure, 100%. Now, I think it's obvious to say that a 1-year-old is young, and having people taste that and they're like, "There's literally no way." I'm like, "No, it's like 12 months. That's it. Slow water reduction, the whole everything that we've done, and it's like just wait for the 2 year." And it really has evolved to a whole nother level of complexity. And not to jump the gun, but forward thinking, I'm super excited for 3 year bottled in bond. It's just it's just gonna increase in complexity, and just become that much more mature, and just be very exciting to see how she evolves. But it's great. It's
What?
a lot of
Oh, sorry, John. I was going to jump in to ask a question too, Jonathan. How did you receive the musician? So you're like asking us how people are enjoying it. I'm kind of curious about your
Like I said, I haven't had a ton of 2-year olds. I mean, I have recently doing this, and I really liked it. I thought it was for what its age is. It does not taste like its age. And to me, I can only say that about one other one that comes to my head, and they do something different than most others, and that's kind of what you guys do in terms of your processes, and I think that's why you guys actually get a very flavorful and complex 2-year-old, instead of maybe an immature acting 2-year-old, so to speak. As a dad to a 2.5-year-old who's a little sassy, I kind of understand how you can, with kids, talk about your bourbon that way. But no, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely one of the ones that, if I can get my hands on again, I will definitely do that.
glad you like her.
yeah, glad to.
Before we get toward the very very end here, I want to at least touch very quickly. While we do a lot of bourbon, whiskey, beer, and cocktails, I do want to touch on the Naturalist, because you guys just rebranded it, with the new bottle and so forth. It's the first rye-based gin made in Texas, and you also were named, I believe, last year as the Texas Gin Distillery of the Year. So that had to be pretty cool. So can you just talk a little bit about the Naturalist? Because I'm sure that was the first product you guys could get out on the market, and that's probably the original baby.
Yeah, the Naturalist, um, the gin itself, as John spoke to, it was a labor of love in creating it. The not many gins have the focus that a whiskey has. Whiskeys try to bring out the natural flavors from the grain and the oak and the region, these sorts of things. And so the botanicals that go into gin usually tell a little bit of, a story. But as a whiskey maker, we wanted to kind of focus on the base of it, like the core, the solid foundation. And so, picking, our rye, as John was saying before, that we grow here, has a delicious quality to it. The brassetto sounds like kind of like bread, but same. It's a rye that you might use in baking rye bread, and the uh, the brassetto, it has a delicious kind of spice and natural sweetness to it, and so picking botanicals that sort of accentuate those characteristics and complement and create balance and all of that stuff, but putting that as the kind of the starting point. It took a while doing it. I don't know how many batches we went through, but I know it took about a year before we finally kind of got the formulation where we felt like it had the balance and flavor and character that we were looking for. And we used some aspects of the slow reduction with it as well, and really felt like we had created a beautiful charming, if even alluring, kind of work of art with what's in the bottle. And then, with the with the kind of giving her a little bit new digs. It's just another way of kind of continuing to elevate the quality of what we have here, and kind of what we value, and valuing our own community, and who we are as people. And so I just think that one of the, with every single thing, you're talking about your kids, and you will come to see this, that their personalities kind of evolve and develop, and then they really, at one part, they really start to shine, and you can really feel who they are really coming through. And I think that kind of getting a little bit of the naturalist's essence coming out in Mark's portrait really just kind of brings her home. It's just a beautiful evolution of what was already a really delicious product. So that's kind of, I guess, the story behind her.
It's really fun too for. I think it's a very good product for gin enthusiasts and people that aren't so much into gin. And I'm definitely more of a whiskey lover than I am a gin lover, but I really wanted to try to create something off the base, and with the botanicals that we use, I wanted to give people a chance that don't like gin, and talk to a lot of people, and they're like, I'm like, oh, you tried the Musician? Oh yeah, I love it. I'm like, have you tried our gin? I'm not a gin person. Like, don't even like want to try it. And I'm like, seriously, just give it a shot, because I was the same way. So I tried to develop something that was like really different than a very juniper forward London dry, just like gin, and I would say almost every single person that I've talked to, they're like, oh, I really like that, I like that kind of, like, that's, but yeah, it's very different. And also it's kind of cool because it's 90 proof too. So a little different on that end, but yeah, it's a very neat product.
And for you, John, I want to ask this question. What's it been like kind of being mentored and working with folks like Nancy Fraley and Mike Delavante? What's that been like?
I mean, that's like a dream come true for, really, to be honest with you, any distiller that, really wants to achieve stuff at a high level, doing things in this craft. I mean, it's quite incredible, honestly. I never thought, the Chris Seals and the owners, they, like I said, with like cutting corners, I mean, they truly have given me every single tool to succeed and to, one, be the distiller that I am, but also the ability to create the products that I create. I mean, working with Nancy Fraley and understanding and still learning, 'cause it's a whole nother deal. Blending and nosing and picking the right barrels and understanding when to pick them, and the slow water reduction process, which is literally a key core value of us. Learning from her and taking some of her classes and continuing to talk to her on a weekly basis. We talk every single week. Truly grateful for that, and to mentor her, and Mike Delavante, just learning that column, and all his totally different approach to things, and just having him one phone call away is really remarkable. Yeah, I'm truly grateful for it. It's a hell of an experience learning from people like that.
I was gonna say, it sounds like y'all have quite the team down there. And my last question, it can be for Chris or John or both. What's next for Still Austin? Because I'm guessing you're not stopping at just 2-year-old bourbons. It sounds like you have a few others in mind. What can you say on air that you feel comfortable with that's recorded?
John, do you mind if you talk about the Distillery Reserve for just a minute, and then maybe I'll mention some things that may come out later this year and next year?
Yeah. Yeah. So our Distillery Reserve series is exclusively just at the distillery. Products that are very limited or one-off barrels that we have. The one that we did previously was a Rye 100 finished in a sherry cask. It was a lot of fun. The next one that we have coming up is, to me, and personally to me, it's got to be the most important barrel that I've put away. 'Cause if I'll give you a funny Nancy Fraley story in a second, but it's the first 6 barrels of rye bourbon ever produced, and then I pulled a little bit of bourbon out of each one because we did use them for the 1 year, but I salvaged some of it and put the first 6 barrels all in a new barrel, so I double oaked it, and now it's 3 years old. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to. It's really incredible. It's cask strength, 109 proof. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. And the Nancy Fraley story, she's a straight shooter, and she will like totally tell you how she feels, like 100%. And I was terrified when I first met her, so I'm like, oh boy, I put away some stuff. I was working here for probably like 3 months, and I'm like, man, I really hope she likes this stuff. And we did some wheated bourbon in the beginning, and wheated bourbon just tends to take longer. It's a really good product, but nonetheless, it takes much longer to age than rye. And she was trying everything, and our goal was to put out something younger because we haven't sourced anything, and looking to put something out to excite the public. And she wasn't really having it for that part of our goal. And I had literally just a super sack of rye, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a rye bourbon. Just gonna try it. Make a rye bourbon. I made one at Black Dirt. I'll make one here. And I fell on that mash bill of 70 white corn, 25 rye, 5 malted barley, and I put away 1 distillation of it. We were originally going to be doing wheated bourbon, and she's like, "Is that all you have?" And like we were talking, I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, I do have one thing. I'm like, if you just want to try this one thing. And she's like, what is it? I'm a rye bourbon. She's like, oh, I'm a big rye gal. I love rye stuff. I'm like, all right. So I pull it. At that point, it was only a month old, and I'll never forget it. She tastes it, and her eyes just like light up, and she's like, "This is what you need to be doing." She's like, "This is how you're going to be able to get to where you want to get." And I remember Chris Seals was like walking by, and the other owners. I'm like, you just want to let him know that, like you want to let him know. We totally switched the gear and did rye bourbon from there. So I mean that barrel is just very monumental to me and very important to me. So I'm really excited for that release.
I believe like what she said at the time too is that other stuff that you're making, it's just not going to be that special. It's going to be like bland or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is really like, well, I don't, it's not that bad. Yes. So the Distillery Reserve series is a wonderful series where John and his team, we challenge them to take the next step, and we make the best that we can make every day, but they can take it a step further with the Distillery Reserve. Later this year, we're going to have the musician in cask strength. That look for that on the shelves. That artwork, spectacular, very, very nice work from Mark again, and won't say too much about her, but she looks quite nice, and the cask strength is just absolutely spectacular. It's delicious. It's going to be a very limited release, so if you see it, buy it, because it's only going to be out. We're going to have a little bit that comes out around Father's Day, and a little bit maybe at the beginning of the fall. And then next year we have our 100% rye whiskey, which there's a lot of rye whiskeys out there, not a lot that are 100% rye, and the flavor is spectacular. I think you're going to really enjoy tasting it when it comes out. But that's a couple things to kind of watch for from Still Austin, and I think we'll probably have a couple of other things that will come down the pike as well. That's the greatest thing about a whiskey distillery is that everything takes a long time, and so you plant a lot of seeds, and we'll get to harvest those, in years and decades ahead of us.
Well, Chris, John, I can't wait to see what you guys put out next because, like I said, I really enjoyed The Musician, and for a 2-year-old, that's something that's saying something, and I can't wait to see what happens next when it gets a little bit more age and what other products you put out because, like I said, that one's one that everyone should give a try, and I really appreciate y'all taking the time to chat.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Really nice talking to you.
Wonderful meeting you, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us. A big fan, and appreciate it very, very much.
Well,
yes,
we'll
absolutely.
Have to do it again sometime.
For sure.
It was an absolute blast. A pleasure to talk with Chris and John of Still Austin. They're doing some amazing things down there. Can't wait to see what comes out down the road. And it's only a 2-year-old bourbon, but it acts way more mature than that. It is worth the try. Anytime you get something that acts a little more mature, think about your kids. If they're doing good things, that's always a positive, and it's the same with bourbon and whiskey as well. As I always say, if you can, give it a try. Also, you need to check out our partners in crime, One Sip Beer Review. They're on Instagram at One Sip Beer Review and Facebook as well. They do near daily beer reviews, some amazing giveaways, and they have a whole lot of fun. That's One Sip Beer Review on Instagram and Facebook. Like I said, don't forget to check out our Give It a Try highlights. They drop on Sunday nights on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And you know what? You also need to check us out on TikTok because that's where we're at now as well, in addition to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Hop Spirits, all one word, because, why not? Why not? You never know what fun things we might be doing over there on TikTok. We got a fun one next week for you, Ballast Point. Talk to their research and development team on some new beers. That's a real fun chat. Learn a lot there. Until then, cheers, everyone.